guys. Thank you for joining Sonically podcast, where music creators educate music creators. I'm Gina.
And I'm Elmo. Today we have a very special guest with us. He is a guy who I've known for a long time over the years, and I am lucky enough to call a very dear friend. His name is
Mm.
John Kim, and he has spent more than a decade in business working in operating and investing environments that have ranged from early stage startups to Fortune 500 companies. In addition to continuing to serve as the partner and founder of Amasia, his global venture firm, John has his own YouTube channel, and it's called The John Kim Show. And this show amasses hundreds of thousands of views per episode and helps people in venture capital and outside of it as well. But before all that, John found his first successes as a musician with his band, The Alley, touring all over the US and attaining a platinum plaque for studio sessions with super vocalist Brandy and super producer Rodney Jerkins. He still continues to create music with a lot of passion today and attributes much of his success in his career to his ability to create great things out of ideas inspired by his walk in faith. So, again, without further ado, we are so honored and privileged to welcome Kimbo, aka John Kim, aka The Man, to the Sonically
Yeah.
podcast.
All right. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Thank you so much. Elmo, it's great to be here. Dear friend Gina, so good to be here with you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah,
It's great
really
to
excited.
have you.
Amen to that.
Um, Yeah. So if we could we just rewind it back to the beginning? Um, I've known you for a lot of years, and I actually met you in a context of a musician first, and then over the years, I realized you did, and you've accomplished all these other amazing feats. But let's start with the music.
Sure.
Did you grow up with music in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the kind words. I don't know if I'd agree with everything you said, but I feel very blessed to have known you for so long and walked together. Yeah, on the music side, I did grow up with music. I think that's a pretty fair statement. My parents love music. They are especially passionate about classical music, and so like most Asian kids, I grew up listening to a lot of classical, and they got me started on kind of music classes, which turned into violin classes when I was 7.
Wow.
And that was it was fun. I wanted to start because of me. They actually asked me, "It's like, do you want to play the violin?" I said, "Yes, definitely. I'm super excited." But then I realized violin's kind of, at least traditionally in school, is known as a little bit of a dorky instrument. So I said, when I was 9 in 4th grade, they had an option to go do band instead of orchestra. So I kept with the violin, but then I picked up the saxophone. So I started taking saxophone lessons. This is just a school.
Wow.
The violin stuff was outside of school, um, and then yeah, I think when I got into sort of like middle school, got exposed a little bit more to other types of music. All my friends were listening to hip hop. I got really into like
Mm.
Cypress Hill and Biggie and Tupac
Mm.
and all this stuff and Run DMC, whatever. And yeah, so I started playing some other instruments. Actually, it was a guy at church, a friend named Hong. He's kind of a mentor who started teaching me how to dabble in a few other instruments. So he started with drums and then bass and guitar.
Wow.
And then, even though it was kind of church, like I started listening to, Metallica and Guns N' Roses and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I definitely say that there was a lot of music in my childhood growing up. Got exposed to a lot of different types of music. But it's funny, I grew up in the Boston area in the Northeast of the United
Mm.
States, and when people said, what kind of music do you like? There's this sort of like stock answer that a lot of people up there say, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, I like everything except for
Except
Yeah.
country.
country?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You've heard that so
I
many
know
times.
that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
It's like, but country. And so for the longest time, I would be like open to everything except for country. But, I actually got into like, there's this fiddle camp. There's a guy named Mark O'Connor who he started playing violin, basically bluegrass and like country
I
fiddling,
love.
hee haw sort of violin. By the time I think he was like 9 or 10, he won every competition there was to win nationally. And then
Yeah.
he started learning other styles of music. So he did a jazz album with Wynton Marsalis and a classical album with
Wow.
Yo-Yo Ma. And anyway, so he's also very
Wow.
integrated, but he comes from this like country,
Background?
bluegrass background. So he set up a fiddle camp where he brought in the best violinists from all the different genres around the world. And so, like in my
Wow.
20s, I went to that camp, just not really because I love country, but because I liked all these other things. And when you're there, like into the wee hours of the night, and everyone's like in their straw hats and like just jamming out and stomping on the ground. I mean, passion is just infectious, right? Whatever it's for. And
Yeah.
I really got to say, I fell in love with country. And you look now, right? Like
Wow.
Lil Nas and Old Country Road and all this stuff, like Old Town Road. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all over the place. So I got to say, I
I
grew up with it. I grew up with a lot of different types of it, and yeah, it's been a huge impact in my life.
So now when people
that's
ask you
awesome.
that, you say everything,
Now I just say
including
everything, which is
country.
including country. I don't say including country, but I just say I just love music. But it feels like almost a bit of a cop out because it's kind of like people who aren't into music would say, like, "Oh yeah, I like all kinds of music."
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but it's really true. Like I really feel that I'm blessed by all different types of music from all different perspectives, and
Mm.
it's all part of this beautiful universe that God's created for us to enjoy. It's a big playground, right? So yeah, I
Amen.
really I love it all, including country.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that you know uh, your main instrument is the violin, and traditionally, a lot of people think of the violin as playing Mozart, Beethoven, a lot of classical pieces, and that type of thing. Um, but you have taken that instrument and the knowledge of that instrument and transitioned to producing and songwriting and creating your own music. At what stage of your musical journey did you find the creative process with music?
Yeah, I guess I started creating myself. Well, I actually started, I think, writing poetry. So it was kind of like,
Hmm.
um, if you rewind, okay, I grew up in a
Hmm.
town where there were very few kids who looked like me. So I was a minority,
Hmm.
and I got bullied, and I was like othered, what they call othered, and um, so I was a pretty emo kid, basically. I was suicidal by the age of 10,
Wow.
and
Oh no.
I just kind of like needed an outlet. So I used to write these poems to just like get my emotions out because I didn't feel like anybody could really understand.
Hmm.
Um, and at one point it just became this natural progression um, to put that to music because I was learning all these music and these progressions and so on. It's like, oh, you can just start laying some melodies to this. So that was like a very smooth, natural thing. And then as I started getting into more kind of contemporary forms of music, I started playing in bands as well. I started playing the electric violin in some of these bands, and
Wow.
I realized that, um, yeah, like it's a beautiful thing, right? To be able to create. I guess the producing sort of side of things came a little bit later. I think in my late teens. Sort of I was looking for a way to earn some money. Actually, it was like in the first year or two of
Hmm.
college, and I saw this. I think it was in the newspaper. I saw some ad for a music studio that was looking for an intern, it's paid intern. It wasn't much money, but I was like, oh, I can go like learn about music. And I went down there, and so it was my first exposure to Pro Tools. And they
Yes.
actually did commercial music. So it was like the BBC has a documentary, and we need somebody to
Yeah.
score it, right? And or we have this
Yeah.
like 30-second film about a commercial about soap or something. We need to lay something down on it. I was like, oh my goodness, there's this thing called a DAW, and you can lay tracks down. You can record stuff, but you can sample things too. And it's actually it just opened up this whole new world for me,
Hmm.
and particularly like the Guns N' Roses and things, like I could hear something and like
Yeah.
play it with a distortion pedal, but I'd heard
Mm.
like all the hip hop that I was listening to, and then I started to get into I used to DJ drum and bass a little bit too, so like the
Wow.
electronic and the hip hop and this type of music that I would hear, but I never knew how to create or was like even possible to create.
Mm.
All of a sudden, when I sat in the studio, it's like, oh my goodness, this is like this is how they do it. It's actually possible. So
Mhm.
it's like all of a sudden things went into color for me. I was like, what, like seeing the world in black and white, and all of a sudden, boom, this crazy. There's this whole new world and way to view everything that's out there. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it kicked off, and yeah, that from there, it's been a big kind of aspect of how I process not just writing music. I'll think
Mhm.
about how to layer things in, and even if it's a more
Mm.
band kind of piece with instruments, I
Yeah.
often have like sound effects and things like that. But also how I
Yeah.
listen to music too, right? I'm trying to visualize how it's laid out and how it's arranged and stuff like that in the studio.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I've done, like I said before, I've known you for a long time, but there's a lot of things I realized that I didn't know about you after reading and listening to a bunch of interviews online. And in many of your interviews, you credit your early success making music with your band, The Alley, as being one of the most impactful gateways that got you to where you are today in business. What
Oh.
were your biggest takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. By the way, it's the ally, not the
I'm
alley.
sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's almost the
Okay.
same. Uh, some people used to see Ally McBeal is spelled the same way, so Ally. So they go, oh, the
Yeah.
alley. So it's actually not technically incorrect, but we said it the
All
alley.
right.
Anyway, so I think
Yeah.
the word that comes to mind for me when I think of that era of my life is really integration. And as
Mm.
you can see with we're talking about the styles of music and everything, it's kind of a theme in general for me. But that that era and that project of the Ally, it really kind of crystallized what that all means for me. And I mean, it even people used to ask us, for instance, like, what kind of music do you play? And
Hmm.
we eventually kind of converged on this term. We called it roots fusion. And the idea was that it's fusion because we're bringing in a bunch of different things, but
Mm.
we're trying to go deep, right? So it's like getting into the roots. And then like roots music, actually, reggae artists like roots rock reggae, they call that kind of music like roots music. But then
Mm,
if you look up roots music online, they say like bluegrass country music, that they refer to themselves, and I think Appalachian, a certain sort of like forms of it are they call that roots music as well. So it's just this idea that
Mm.
you can go deep in things, um, and the world, I think, as we move forward, is getting increasingly sort of more integrated and connected. Right, a lot of that has to do with
Mm.
technology, um, and so I think whereas before you could kind of sit in your silo and be um, very good at one thing, and that's how you added value to the world. I think increasingly being able to look across whether it's genres of music or I'd say the other thing for me integration wise was like um, different types of people, right? Like we were all very different types of people in the band itself, and like the
mm,
Mm.
whole VH1 behind the scenes thing. I mean, we're fighting, and I love those guys. They love me too, and it was great. And when you're living out of hotel rooms for months at a
Yeah.
time, you're just going to get on each other's nerves.
For
So
sure.
kind of the integration of different personalities, I realized, is like so
Mm.
important because whatever you do, as much as like we love this idea that it's our art. I mean, it is that, right? And it's the expression of values and emotions and experiences that we've been through. But no matter what you're trying to do, if you can't get along with people, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So it's about the
mm,
integration of
Yeah.
personalities.
For
And I
sure.
think also for me in that era was the first time, like for me, I had sort of been in bands and orchestras and things like that before, musical
Mm.
ensembles, but and then I had sort of studied business, and by that point, I had started my first company and sold it. But like, I never really thought about the two together. And this was the first
mm,
project for me. It
Mm.
was like, hey, it's both a startup. We were a Delaware incorporated, company, rock and roll band. We thought about.
Mm.
I wrote a business plan. I said, this is how we're going to do our
wow.
marketing. This is how we're going to do, our customer acquisition and our promotions. And I had to learn much more about the business, the management side of things. We were touring around. How do we run? There's like, we had staff, we had people doing lights and sound and things like that. So So the
Hmm.
integration of these different spheres of like business and music. So I think that's the word that comes to me. But there's so many different takeaways, but it's really um, been a huge benefit to me in the rest of my career. Actually, funny story. I don't think I ever told you this, or I don't think I ever said it publicly. But um, I joined at one point. I joined Goldman Sachs, this investment bank. So I was a trader there, and that's a very coveted position. A lot of my friends graduating from school were trying to get that job, and I was just thinking
Hmm.
about music and other stuff. So I wasn't even trying to get that job.
Mm,
But then most of them didn't get it because there's only a few slots and things. But
that's
later,
crazy.
I ended up doing all this other stuff, and then I ended up at Goldman.
Yeah.
And my boss told me, there's like a list of things that they're looking for, but um, and he said one thing when he got my resume that really came across is that in this role, everyone who even applies for that kind of role is relatively in terms of like comfort with numbers and all that stuff, like, is fine.
Mm,
But the thing is,
Yeah.
that's not really what makes a good trader. What makes a good trader is somebody who can go and take a little bit of risk. And so the fact that
Yeah.
I left,
mm,
I was actually working at Merck for a little while. He's like, somebody, the fact that you left a Fortune 500 company to go do this thing to pursue your passion, not that it was dumb risk, but you took some risk and just jumped out,
uh,
to me, demonstrated that you're different from all these other resumes. So that actually, my music situation, and by the way, my
wow.
parents were telling me, don't do it. Like typical Asian parents, like, don't do it. We're going to
Yeah.
cut you off. Like,
Yeah.
not to
Yeah,
too much fun anyway, but like
yeah.
whatever. And I just had to do it. Right. Sometimes you just know you got to do what you got to do. I'm not saying you should all rebel from your parents.
Definitely.
Everyone who's listening to this, right? You should honor your mother and father. But
Yeah.
it's funny, like coming back full circle that yeah, my music time actually got me a job at Goldman Sachs. Like, who would have thought of that, right? And
That's
so
Yeah.
all
crazy.
these other lessons around integration, I think, yeah, is very, very impactful.
Was that
That's
person in charge of
wonderful.
hiring, did he have a musical background as well? And that's why he
No,
could recognize nothing. Wow.
no, not at all. Yeah, he was an oil trader. That's it. Straight
Mm,
through. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
straight
That's
up.
But that's
crazy.
the other thing is like music is so universal, right? You don't need to be a musician to um,
Be a musician.
understand
Yeah.
what that's like, and to love it and
Yeah.
be passionate about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely went to karaoke with him a lot, and I'll tell you,
Yeah.
man, the guy loves music. He's not a musician ever, but
Yay.
and like frankly, oil trading. I mean, who cares about oil trading, right? It's like there's a very small sliver of people who are passionate about that, or who live and breathe that, or
Hmm.
you can't. There's no such thing as an equivalent of an oil trading karaoke where normal people can just go and like be really passionate, passionate
I'm
about oil
sorry.
trading or
That's
whatever.
funny.
Hey,
That
Um,
just
maybe there
sounds.
could be.
Uh,
Could be a
that's
use
maybe there's
hilarious.
case.
this idea.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but I mean that it's
Oil
a beautiful
trading
thing about
karaoke.
art and music is that it's just so universal, right? The universal language
It
that
is
everyone speaks. Yeah.
Totally.
wonderful.
Well, your career path went from musician to trader to
Yeah.
now unicorn investor, which is an amazing, leap. That's leaps and bounds from each career um, point. Um, and now you're in a position to help entrepreneurs accelerate the building out of their creative ideas.
Mm,
Um, Jay Z and Nas are other notable music names that have found success following this similar path that you've followed.
yeah.
Um, for those younger music creators out there wondering what is really the path for them in this pursuing this art of creating music, is it realistic for them to aspire to this amazing path that you've um, been on?
Um, it's a great question as well. First of all, I'll say we've co-invested. I think we've co-invested with Nas, but I definitely know that we've co-invested with Jay Z. It's a
Oh.
company called
Mm,
Super in Indonesia,
Mm.
mm.
and that was a big moment for me. It's a company I sit on the board of it, so I'm
Wow.
very involved in this company, and they do e-commerce there. That was a big moment for me because actually the biggest miss of my musical career is that I was this close to playing on a record for Jay Z. I don't know if you remember the acoustic album that the Roots did with him,
Mm.
I
but
loved.
the studio where I was recording our album, it was called The Studio, so it was the Roots and Larry Gold is the producer. So it
Wow.
was kind of like a JV with them. And Larry said, "Hey, he's a cellist actually, like you, Elmo. I think you started as a cellist, right?"
Yeah.
So he went to Curtis, like
Wow.
he's done strings for everybody, like everybody that you can imagine, Jay Z, J Lo, Justin Timberlake, Rihanna, Kanye, everybody. So, but he said, hey, this old Jewish guy, like, hey, Kimbo, I'm putting a string quartet together for Jay Z. You want to come? I was like, yeah, dude. Like, you don't need to pay me. I'm there. Just let me know. All right,
Yeah.
I'll give you a call. And then 3 weeks later, I'm in the studio, and he's like talking, he's like kind of bragging about how amazing this experience was, going to New York and playing on this record for Jay-Z. And I'm like, Larry, you said you're gonna let me play on that record. And he's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, but anyways, that's what led to the
Oh,
sort of
wow.
he felt bad, I think, so he told Rodney in the studios, hey, you go check out Kimbo. So that led to the Brandy thing. But I don't know, I love Brandy,
Hmm.
but man, Jay-Z was such a huge
Wow.
fan. So anyways, having been so close to be able to collaborate with him, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like full circle, after many years collaborating. I still haven't met him, by the way. He's not like a buddy or anything, but
Right.
the fact that we're
He's
working alongside
crazy.
each other, yeah, to help this company is it was like a really full sort of a moment, I guess, for me in a sense. So yeah, I guess to get back to the
Wow.
question, um, is it realistic? And should people aspire to be music creators? I mean, I think the thing that I'll say is like, uh, no matter what you're doing, you have to think big. I mean, it's your responsibility to think big. um,
Mm.
there's a lot of research out there. I was a psychology minor, so I love thinking about um, the mind, the human mind, and there's so much research out there about how if you think big, bigger things happen.
Mm.
um, and that's why
Yeah.
athletes, they sit there and they like visualize themselves winning a race, right, a competition. What does it
Mm.
feel like? What does it smell like? What is all the
Mm.
sensory things? And when they do that, the research shows they win more, right? They actually do better, right? They don't win all the
Oh,
time.
Yeah.
They win a lot more than they would if they really believe and visualize themselves like winning.
Mm.
um,
for sure.
and this is like goes throughout history, right? I mean, I go to church. I've explored a lot of different faiths. I was, practicing Buddhist at one point,
Mm.
and a Hindu, all these things. But
Hmm.
like, and it's pretty kind of universal in a sense. But
Yeah.
if you look back at the Bible as an example, like Jesus actually never
Mm.
asked people to have less faith. He always asked them to have
Mm.
more,
Yeah.
right?
More.
Yeah.
Why? Because he wanted people to live good lives and find, great experiences. And the way you do that is by thinking bigger, right? If you think,
Mm.
Mm.
there's an entrepreneur that I met once, and he said, if you reach for the sky and you hit the treetops, it's a lot better than sitting on the ground, right? Which is what most people do.
Mm.
They just sit there on the ground.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, I think like you have to think big. Whatever you're doing, you have to just believe in yourself and have faith that you're on a mission
Hmm.
from God, to do something
Hmm.
amazing and make a positive impact on this world at a really, really big scale. And if you do
For sure.
that, then you're going to be more successful, like than you would be otherwise. And let me tell you, if you're successful, you're going to have to become an investor at some point, right? Because you're just going
Yeah.
to get some money, right? And when
Hmm.
that happens, ideally you shouldn't be spending all of it, right? Because it just makes a lot more sense, I think, to save. I mean, again, I spend a lot of time with this, and frankly, in the entertainment industry, um,
Yeah.
there's probably a little bit too much of that. I think people probably spend too much of the money that they get, like showing off
Yeah.
and,
Hmm.
and things, as opposed to like
Flossing.
showing,
Yeah.
yeah, floss. And instead of like, sewing back into the future.
For sure.
And, particularly if you have some skill set. I mean, all these people, Jay-Z and us, but,
Mm.
people who have achieved anything in the industry, they have a network, they have
Yeah.
access to opportunities,
Hmm.
they have a brand, and those things. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of people have money, but like when you can multiply your return on money with those assets that you have that are not even financial, I think it's a no-brainer. You absolutely got to do it. And yeah, so I'd encourage everybody
Yeah.
who's listening in. Yes, it's realistic. It's your responsibility. You got to do
Mm.
it. And I'll also say this, like, you know, um, there's a guy named Bill Johnson who said this once. He said, whenever you think big, right, there are going to be moments when things happen, like miraculous things happen, and you step forward. And there are going to be moments when, things fail, right? Your circumstances go
Yeah.
down. So in those situations, when things are great, that's great. That's easy, right? And you have more faith because you're like, oh my goodness, that just happened. Like, dude, this can happen. So you start to think bigger. But the question is, what happens when something doesn't go exactly as you plan,
Mm.
you set a goal for yourself to get like, I don't know, however many streams on Spotify, and it's like 1/10 of that.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do? Well, you can lower the level of your faith to the level of your circumstances,
Mm.
or you can keep your faith high. And if you do, inevitably, over time, let your circumstances, they will rise to the level of your faith, right?
Mm.
So you can't get discouraged, right? Because there's always going to be ups and there's always going to be downs. But,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
just got to keep the faith, man. You just got to think big. And, I believe you will become an investor and, yeah, be able to follow that same path for sure.
That's incredible.
That's
And it's
wonderful.
interesting how you mentioned, these very large figures in the music world like Jay-Z and Nas.
Mm.
Their their music is a lot of times putting out that message of, you know, um, get that car, get that
Yeah.
whip, hope,
It is.
get
It
that
is. It
house,
is. It is.
Yeah.
get that new bag or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's
Shorty's gonna
incredible
be
to
up in
me.
your face, if you got all
Yeah,
this stuff and whatever,
yeah.
whatever. Like, yeah, yeah,
It's incredible to me how, I guess through that network that you mentioned, they were able to, um, I guess, in a way, do the opposite of the message of the music that they were putting out, and doing those things that you were saying, like,
mm,
um, saving your money, putting it towards, like stewarding it for helping other entrepreneurs and founders and businesses, and growing their personal net worth through that. Yeah, I find that pretty fascinating.
yeah. I think so. I mean, I think it's a spectrum,
Very.
right? So I don't think it's so binary. On one end, I wouldn't even put Jay Z and Nas. I would put like Warren Buffett, right? The dude
Mm.
is, one of the richest people in the world. For many years, was the richest person in the world. Had so much money, but he's still driving like a old beat up Buick, and he eats McDonald's for breakfast and drinking Coca Cola, and like um, you know, uh, so he's like incredibly frugal despite having so many resources. And then actually, I heard about somebody who I think we'd all know. We have a mutual friend who's this guy's he's clearing like over 100 million a year in revenue, and he's been in the industry a really long time, and he's still not a billionaire. And he's like, saying, "Oh, like how come I'm not a billionaire?" And like all these other people are, and it's so unfair. I'm like, yeah, how can you not be? And it's because he spends all his money on buying jets and like all this stuff, right? So there's like a spectrum. Um, and I would also note that like um, it's not just it's important to save to give back, but I also think
Yeah.
that for people who are starting out, it's important to save to reinvest in yourself, right? Because whatever one you want to do next, it's going to take resource, right? So I remember like
For
way
sure.
back at the very beginning, our first studio album, we I mean we were on tour and we're like earning it wasn't at the very beginning. It was like a few $100 or something for a show type of thing, and then got to
Mhm.
be more over time. But when we put out our first studio album, it cost like 15 grand, which for us was like a ton of money at the time
For
Yeah.
to
sure.
put it together. And that album is the one that put us, in Larry Gold in the Root Studio and led to all this
Yeah.
stuff, and Rodney and all these things. So like, um, but when people and then like heard that we were doing that, these are fans. I remember there's one guy who came up, Dave Kratchke, who said, "Yeah, like I heard what you guys did, and I just want to say props for that because, like, most people at that point in time, at that age that we were at in that scene and everything, you weren't thinking about like saving to reinvest, but like all these things, it's not just to give back at some point in the future, but the next thing that you want to do for yourself, save some resource, like reinvest in it, right? And
For sure.
it's tough. It's tough in this industry because a lot of it's about like image and show and stuff like that. But
Mm.
it's a
Mm,
balance. There's a spectrum. Yeah.
definitely.
I'm learning so much today. Oh my
Ah,
god.
no.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, please go on, please, please.
You're
um,
Ah.
making me
so
blush. Oh.
yeah,
I wish
John's
I met
full
you
of wisdom,
sooner.
full of
I wish I
gems.
met you sooner. I feel like this is like yoga and meditation class or something. I don't know what this is, but this is something cool. If I feel it, people are feeling it. I'm telling you now. Oh,
that
geez. Okay, I'm just gonna change into some comfortable. No, I'm kidding. Go on. Go on.
was
Mhm.
Ah.
So you mentioned one of your portfolio companies, Super, that you invested in with Jay Z and some other folks. Skillshare is another company of yours that you've also invested in. It was a bet you made on a founder and the business that essentially educates aspiring creators to develop their skill sets.
Let's see.
What was the motivation behind the decision to invest in that company?
Yeah. So Skillshare is one of our successes. They're doing great, and so we're very proud of that investment. I would say, why do we invest in that company? It's probably the same set of reasons that we invest in any company, and in fact,
Mm,
it's relatively. There's some things that we look for as a firm that are unique, but I think what would
mm,
be useful actually is to go through um, this sort of foundation that most investors look for, which also like
yeah.
it's probably the majority. It's definitely the overwhelming majority of our rubric as well in terms of like what we look for. But I also think if you think about it, it's probably what A&R reps, are looking for in artists, and labels are looking for in producers and things like that too. So, for us, we call it the three T's: team, TAM, and traction, right? So the first is the team. Um, and there are lots of like little sub things in the team, sort of like subcategories of, okay, what have they done before? And,
Mm,
um, how much of that is relevant? What skills can they bring? But actually more than that, even because, things are changing so fast, really, we look for a lot of psychological characteristics like grit and growth mindset. When
mm,
you are a founder, probably just like, by the way, I'd say like most producers, the way that I think about it, are kind of like founders, right? I mean, you're hustling, your product is your music, you're trying to find product market fit, you're trying to get distribution, promote it, get into people's
mm,
hands, have marketing strategy, all that stuff. So like, you're kind of like an entrepreneur in a sense, right? So, um, the if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get punched in the face. Like I said before, there are going to be up moments, there are going to be down moments, right? And in those
yeah.
down moments, if it's your own creation and somebody says, "Nah, I don't want that," it's hard, man, right? It's like you
It
get
is.
the door slammed in your face, and to be able to come back from that and say, "I'm going to stick with it," despite all these difficult times, and to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. That's really much harder to find than like whatever
Mm,
ABC skill set, right? You can learn skills, but these psychological things,
right.
that grit and growth mindset is
Yeah.
harder to teach somebody. I think you can actually get it over time too, but it's harder.
Mm.
It
So
is.
so that's the team part of it. TAM is what we call total addressable market, TAM, and so for venture capitalists, when we go and invest in companies, we invest in them pretty early, so it's pretty risky in a sense, right? But that
Mm-hmm.
means that when one works out, we have to see that it's could be a really really big company, at least like $1 billion company. These days, it's like
Mm,
there's so many $1 billion companies, so unicorn isn't
yeah.
even that interesting. Like it's like okay,
Mm.
it's got to be it could be a decacorn, right, for it to kind of be interesting. And so how could it do that? You have to think about the business model and then the space that it's in, and it's the same thing. Like you know you could be the best, most amazing, most talented artist in Gregorian chant in the world, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be hard, man. It's going to be hard to get your music out there because there just really ain't a market for that sort of thing. And does that
Mm-hmm.
mean you should sell out and go do what's commercial? Not necessarily, right? It depends on kind of what you care about.
Mm-hmm.
When I went into Larry Gold and the Roots studio, it was the first time I really was in an environment where it was like, a business, and it was straight up like, we're going to make records that sell, right? And
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
didn't. I don't think they were. Up until that point, I had this thing in my head of like, if you try and make records that sell, you're selling out, right? So the
Right.
only
Mm,
true art is stuff that like only a niche audience can really enjoy and process.
Keeping it
Um,
mm,
underground.
yeah, and there's something to that perspective. I can understand that. But then after going and seeing Larry and the Roots, and Questlove was up in the studio and everything, and like I mean, these guys, they're commercial, but they're talented, right? They're
They're
musical.
brilliant. Yeah, they're
They're
brilliant.
not. I don't feel like they're sacrificing on their art at all. So if you want to go that route, and these days, I think that I'm personally, I don't think it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but I'm personally much more open to this
Mm,
intersection of profit and purpose, right? And it's something that we do as a firm as well, because we have this like impact, like climate change thesis. But then, a lot of people are like, oh, you're investing in climate change, it's like a charity. It's like, no, 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 no. We're trying to make a lot of money too, right? Because
yeah.
actually, I think in the short term, you can sacrifice like impact to make money. You can go
Mm,
set up I don't know, like weapons dealing ring or something like that. I don't know, but in the
mm-hmm,
long term, I think that catches up with you, right? In the long term, I think you have to do impactful like things that are good for the world to make money in the
mm,
long term. I also think that if you're not adding value and creating some value, like it's not that sustainable, right? There's certain things that are um, yeah. So if you set up a company and if it's profitable, then you can scale more, you can have more employees, you can have more customers, and that scales your impact that you're making as well,
mm,
right? So I like to
for
sit at the
sure.
intersection of profit and purpose in general. That's for me. It's not necessarily the right
Mm,
thing, but
Mm.
and then so again, when we invest, whether it's a company, or I think when A&R rep, and I know that these days like labels aren't necessarily the way to go, or it's not the only way to go certainly,
mm,
but just thinking through like getting out there, the total addressable market. It's like, is this product something where there's a big opportunity or not? I think that's worth just thinking about if
uh,
that's where you decide to go. And the last thing
Mm-hmm.
is traction. Um,
mm,
and this is an interesting one because okay, so when I started my first company, the way that it would go was, a founder, a CEO would have an idea. They'd be like, hey, I'm going to write a 30-page business plan, and then go bring that to venture capitalists, raise money, and then you go build for like a year. And then you have a
mm,
product, and you see, like, did the product fit the market or not? And usually it doesn't, it's not quite, so you have to iterate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's happened is that because of like cloud computing and because of, Amazon Web Services and all this stuff, you can actually like you can spend like nothing and go and build a company, if
Mm-hmm.
you know how to code,
that's
especially.
crazy.
And you can build something for 2 weeks and then get feedback on it from your 10 best friends and iterate on it, iterate on it, iterate on it. And so that same
Yeah.
shift from like having to go for a very long iteration cycle to very short
Mm,
has happened in the music industry as well, right? And so
Yeah.
it blew
yes.
my mind because I had
Yes.
been out of my band for, I don't know, it was like 5 years. I
Mm,
was in Korea for 4 years, right? And we were working on some music, Elmo, like hip
Yeah.
hop stuff back then. But
mm,
you
Mm-hmm.
know, I hadn't been back in the U.S. and back in like really in the industry. But when I went back and I met my bandmates, who are by the way much more successful than me, like um, our drummers like playing stadiums, like selling out stadiums around. Our bassist went and he's toured with Radiohead and Beck and all these people. So they're like way more successful than me. But I went back and I was talking to one of the bandmates and like, dude, these days it's crazy. You can just go and onto like these listservs, like mailing list type, I don't know, chat group things where, and we'll find profiles of bands that we think are kind of similar to us, and then we'll sometimes they're like indie bands and sometimes we'll just write covers and then put them up there, and then we start to just gain a following, right? And you can do it in a much shorter iteration
wow.
cycle. You don't have to like go and spend 50 grand at a studio and then who knows how much more
Yeah,
promoting for your studio record to see if it fits the market or not. You can just get that
Yeah.
traction
for
early.
sure.
And so that blew my mind, and it's like it actually makes a lot of sense. So all of you out there who are making music, you're doing it in the best time in the history of the universe, right? It's like you can
Absolutely.
actually you're not held hostage by these huge players. You can go out and hustle and do
For
your thing and
sure.
start to get that people to follow and to collaborate with. So yeah, team, tam, traction, and Skillshare had a bunch of users. They had done it in a very what we call capital efficient way, so they hadn't spent a lot of money getting these users on
Mm-hmm.
board.
Yeah.
And there are people like who are creators, and it's hard to make a living as a creator at a certain scale, right? Unless you're like getting really
Hmm.
super scaling. But a lot of these people, they're great creators, are so talented, but then they're able to make a living by teaching, and they just throw up some courses on their craft.
Yeah.
And so
Mm,
that was something magical there that was empowering this whole thing. So yeah, team tam traction. That's kind of what we look for in Skillshare.
Awesome.
wonderful.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And one of the observations that I've seen through our community and even myself, um, navigating my way through the music industry is we kind of have that mindset of, man, we got to get a label deal.
Yeah,
We can't make it
Yeah,
without a label deal. And
I know
although
that.
there's a lot of alternative avenues out there to get your music out, I still feel like the average music creator is still of the mindset that they need that intermediary to step in and throw down a bunch of money into their work in order for them to quote unquote make it. And there's only like a select few evangelists of the independent grind, like Russ,
Russ. Yeah,
Illmind.
Mm,
yeah,
But I think there needs to be more of that um, communicated to the music creator community, that the power's within them, the
yeah.
power's within their ideas, their innovativeness, and their ability to hustle.
Totally, 100% agree. And I mean, Russ and yeah, these guys, they've gone so far. Um, and I think, the other thing I would say is that it kind of, I haven't thought about this way before, but it's just like spurring some thoughts here. It kind of mirrors the conversation about venture capitalists actually in our industry, as in the kind of tech startup world. Um, like, do you need them? You know, and particularly actually
you
with
do.
what's happening in crypto, like, because you can, I mean, market's not
Yeah.
fantastic right now, but like for the
Mhm.
longest time, it's like you could just put up an ICO and raise money. So why do you need, what's the future of venture capital if money is just so available for people starting projects now?
Mm,
And I will say that um, it's a little bit um, unfair, I think, maybe a little bit more than a little bit unfair, that people with uh, influence, these intermediaries, whether it's labels or whatever, they're controlling the fate of um, lots of people. And
mm,
I think that the sort of there's an injustice there that kind of needs to be rectified. I think practically speaking, though, um, at least I can say in the venture industry, I've worked with some label ish, type people, like not as many as you guys, but like, I think in general, if you go to a VC versus just raising money from an ICO or whatever, it's not about the
mm,
money that they bring, right? It's more about the experience and the connectivity. So they bring certain relationships and wisdom and stuff like that. Now, the
mhm,
unfortunate reality is, like, I'd say the majority of venture capitalists are kind of like vultures, and they say they have all this connectivity and they're going to help you and all this stuff, but then it's more like extractive, like they're like trying to take stuff from
Mm,
you. I think that's probably true of labels, to be honest, right? But I do
yeah.
think that there
yeah.
is a smaller proportion of venture capitalists. And I'm not saying I'm one of those. I try to be one of those where there's like a real value proposition. They're not sitting and extracting. They're trying to add value to you as an entrepreneur.
Mm,
And again, I'm not as familiar with the sort of the label scene, but I think at least in theory, I could understand that maybe there's this like unicorn label exec out there, right, who actually um, does stuff for you as an artist, provides value,
yeah,
and they get something in return. But yeah, I think the even if that's the case, even if that is your dream, which I think you need to question these days, right? Because as you said, there's so many
yeah.
examples of success without going that route, and I think that's only going to continue as time goes
Hmm.
on. And absolutely, it's not like a lot of times people are given this idea that, like, oh, as VCs we know and we pick well and stuff like that. VCs have no idea, right? I mean, I work with the best people, like the most famous people in the industry, like I sit on boards with and stuff, and like, dude, they have freaking no idea, right? I have no idea. Every investment looks good, it looks great on the day that you made it, but like over 50% of
Mm,
these companies
Yeah.
fail.
yeah.
And so to say, like, I need a label A&R exec or I need a venture capitalist to validate my idea, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like as you said, I'm not sure that you're putting the faith in the right place. But I would
Hmm.
say even
Hmm.
if you decide, like, if you want that route, I don't think you necessarily need to go that route, especially at the beginning.
Hmm.
In fact, I think it helps you not to go that route because of all the things we said. You can actually get traction first, and so you don't need
Yeah.
to worry about, like, am I going
Yeah,
to go the labor route or am I going to go the independent route? Whatever it
that's
is, right
true.
now you're going the independent route, right? And so
Right.
you just
Yeah.
keep going that, and don't sit there and like make a demo and just hang out and wait for luck to lead you to an A&R exec to like give them your track. Like that doesn't make sense. Just keep hustling, keep
Yeah,
doing the independent thing, and if you do that, you're going to have options, right? Like Russ
Hmm.
actually,
for
I don't know if he
sure.
actually has or not, but he's definitely gotten labels coming to him being like, hey, let me sign you, right? He's got a freaking huge fan base. What exec wouldn't want that? But at that point,
Yeah.
you control your
Mm,
own destiny, right? You can say like, I'm going to
Totally.
take that or
yeah,
I'm not going to take that. So don't wait.
Hmm.
Don't
for
wait for
sure.
that. Just you got to keep hustling. For right now, you just keep depending on the stuff that's in your control, which is I'm going the
For
independent route.
sure.
I'm going to make this a success, and then who knows? Maybe it goes the label thing, maybe it doesn't. But I think it's actually a lot better if you have the option to do it and then you don't. I'll also say this: like, I think it hits the way you phrase the question, Elmo, really well, which is that all of us. We're out seeking these things, um, success in
Yeah.
whatever endeavor it is, and
Mm,
um, that looks like a certain thing to us. But if you dig deeper into what is it, like, why do you want to have a platinum record and reach 1 million people? Why do you want to make money producing records? Why do you want to work with XYZ artist? And often
mm,
it comes down to like kind of affirmation, like sense of identity, like I'm
yeah.
worth it, I've
Hmm.
done this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like for people for a lot of us who haven't been like signed on a major label before, it's like, oh, if I could just get signed on a major label, it'd be like this influential person affirming me. And then when I go
Yeah.
talk, at a party, it's like, yo, I'm signed. And people go like, oh, wow, he's signed to Sony or whatever. And it's like, oh, he just gets stepped
Mm,
up in this like value chain of like affirmation or whatever. But I think
Hmm.
the goal is like, if you go around and you're like, hey, that dude wanted to sign me and I said no, I mean, that's even better affirmation, right? So I think you got to get down into the roots of like, why
yeah.
are you trying to do what you're trying to do? And
Hmm.
again,
That,
it's
yeah.
path dependent, but like you can choose your own destiny later. But just focus on what you can focus on for now.
Mm, amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Some more gems from
Seriously.
John Kim.
Yeah, my goodness gracious. If only, I'm telling you now, if only I would have known half of what you're telling us today. I think, I don't know, I'm not going to regret or, cry right now, but it's like I'm hearing your story and your journey. And the one thing I'm feeling is, I wish I knew. So I can only imagine what the people listening, how they're going to feel. Like if I can just see people really resonating, whether to be like, thinking about things that they might be feeling or thinking, and feeling like they're not alone, right? All these like questions we have, these the journey that we're walking on is confusing, especially as an artist, as a music producer. You don't know what you're going to do. It's not like a 9 to 5 job, right? So I feel like giving them hope is the thing that you're doing. And I feel
Mm.
like it's beautiful, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina. I mean,
I
yeah,
love it. I love it.
thank you. You're very kind. Again, I'm
I
not
think
sure
I'm
I
gonna
agree with everything you're saying.
cry.
No, no, I
No, I
don't
just
try to agree
yeah.
with everything,
I
but
just think I'm gonna cry. Yeah, I just think I'm
uh,
gonna cry. I'm not even kidding. It's just
uh,
I wish I knew.
thank you. You're
But
too
you
kind.
guys do though. The people listening will know now. So if you don't know now, you know.
If you don't know, now
Yeah.
you know.
No,
Um,
we'll leave that last word
yeah.
out.
So um, a lot of what you were saying leads into this next question. Your
Mm.
investment firm, Amasia, has been an early investor into a handful of blockchain technology companies like Ripio, Poco,
Yeah.
and Climate Trade. It is said that blockchain's impact will be felt across many industries. How do you see it impacting the music industry and music creators?
Yeah, very good
Hmm.
question. So yeah, I've been
Yeah.
a believer. First of all, let me say this: I don't think I don't think blockchain is the future of music. I think blockchain is the future of everything.
Mm.
Mm.
And I felt that since 2013 is when I first found out about space, developed a thesis for our firm, and we
2013.
started investing. Yeah,
Wow.
Bitcoin was $100 back then. So, and since then, we've seen a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and we're in a down cycle right now.
Mm.
I think actually we're going to go further down from here, but
Oh
it's
no.
okay. I mean, I think our, if you're a believer, it's like what we said, right? You
For
can
sure.
hodl till the circumstances catch up with your faith. This is not financial advice, by the way, right? But like, I've seen a lot of cycles, right? And if you're a
Yeah.
believer in the long term, you're a believer in the long term. That's what it is. So, um, and I guess let me also kind of break down a little bit about why I think it's the future of everything, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit about music. So,
Mm.
historically, most businesses and things through which we interacted with the world, they were
Mm.
more uh, physical and kind of brick and mortar, let's call it more traditional, whatever it is. And as the world
Mm-hmm.
gets more digitized, um, more businesses and more of these ways that we engage with the world are platforms or networks. And a lot of them are just online only. And sometimes they're like online, and then they have OTO, they call it online offline. So they have like offline element, but then they're, tech enabled. And
Mm-hmm.
with any network, okay, there's a greater value to the network the more people are on the network. Let me explain what I mean by that. So, um, telephones. When the telephone was first invented, okay, um, there was one dude with a telephone. It's not very valuable to have a telephone with one dude on it, right? Who are you going to call? You're going to call yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's not that valuable.
Mhm.
So he's like, all right, let me give you a telephone. And it's like, okay, now, me and Elmo can call each other. And that's pretty cool, but then it's like, hey, let's give Gina one. And it's like, oh, now I can call Elmo or I can call Gina, right? It's even more valuable. So each additional
Yeah.
user person that comes into a network makes the network more valuable. Now,
Mm.
that's true of telephones. It's true of social networks like
For
Facebook,
sure.
which nobody uses anymore, especially people on this chat, I'm sure. By the way, the John Kim Show is not on YouTube; it's on Facebook. Just in case you're going there and people are checking out, and say, "Hey, I can't find him." But anyways, it's on
Yeah.
Facebook. But
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
no, it's
Sorry.
okay. But
Right.
you know, yeah. So like when there's an early Facebook user, each new user that came on Facebook was actually adding value to Facebook. Okay, but how are they
Yes.
rewarded for the value that they bring to the network? They're not. Actually, they have to. I mean, these tech companies didn't pay, but like the first telephone subscribers had to pay to be part of the network. They didn't get paid to be part of the network; they paid. And Facebook kind
Yeah.
of flipped that model on its head. And like, it's not just Facebook, but like a two-sided marketplace, like an eBay. So these tech companies, they came and they realized like, hey, you're bringing value to me. Why should I charge you for it? I should just try and get as many of you as possible so I can make the company more valuable. But they didn't actually pay the user to come on. So what's happening now in the crypto sphere is that they've seen so with a social media company like Facebook, they don't charge you to come on, but they know that the more people they have, the more valuable the company gets. And then once there are a ton of people on it, then they monetize you. They serve you ads,
Hmm. Ads.
they sell your data, they do all sorts of bad stuff, which is like not really in your interests. But they have to do that
Right.
because who owns Facebook? It's a bunch of investors that's not the users.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
um, so what's happening now is like these crypto projects, these Web3 projects, they're like, hey, come on. But when you come on, we're going to give you tokens. You're going to own this project. It's like if an early Facebook user got free Facebook stock for every time they clicked a button, liked a photo, shared a post, that's kind of the equivalent of
Yeah.
what will be happening now. And what that means is the users own the platform. Not just the users, they're investors and stuff too, but like every user is aligned. So
That's
when they're thinking about how do we
crazy.
monetize, they're not sitting and thinking about like, hey, how can we extract value from the users? How can we like screw them over and sell their data? And how can we serve them ads which they don't want to see and yada yada yada, right? So
Mm.
it's a
Yeah.
very different kind of mindset. And so all these
Mm.
platforms, I think that's why it's the future of everything. So 2020 it was like I think it was the DeFi summer. A lot of these like lending and whatever platforms, like two-sided platforms, that you just bring people on and you actually reward them. And
I
there's going to be
see.
risks, like we saw Terra and like collapse and everything like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then there's a bunch of stuff happening in the industry right now. But there's going to be risks. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs again. But in general, the idea that, hey, I should be actually not you paying me, but I should be paying you to come use my platform, was the whole original idea around DeFi, and that's how you could get yields that were higher than sort
Ah.
of market rates. And it's the same thing. So let's get to music, right? Um, music is, um, you know, it used to be a very physically bound thing. You could
Yes.
only, for most of human history, experience music in a room when you're physically in the same room as the people performing that music.
Yeah.
But then, because of digitization, and it was actually even before digitization, but like, how do you say, like encapsulation through like records, vinyl, and stuff like
Mm.
that, you could actually record it. And we realized it's just information. Music is information. And so if you
Mm.
can,
Mm.
encapsulate it, and then later came digital stuff, and after tapes, it was like CDs and so on and so forth. And if it's just information, that's where these platforms are really powerful, because you're just throwing up something on the internet and people are coming to check it out, right? And so
Yeah.
um,
Mm.
any platform like Sonically, I think, is a platform. And
Hmm.
um, you know, there's an incredibly powerful community in um, Discord, right? And it's at the very
Yeah.
early stages, but at some point, as the community scales, it could make sense. Like, hey, let's incentivize new people to come and actually give them something, instead of like, I mean, you're not charging anybody or anything right now, but like, Spotify right now, you have to go and pay a subscription. But
Hmm.
Yeah.
why pay a subscription? Like, in fact, yeah, there's some folks. So Snoop Dogg and his son Cordell, he goes by Champ. Champ is a very avid Web3 investor, and his username on Twitter is Champ de Medici. He's actually this guy. I had a chance to meet him last time I was in LA, and I'd really
Nice.
keep an
What?
eye out for him. Like, he gets
Mm.
He's on
business.
top of things.
Yeah, he like surrounds himself with really good people. He can produce
You
tracks.
gotta
He
write this
raps. Like,
down. You
he's
gotta
going
write this
places. This guy.
down.
And so, anyways, they're working on something in that space, in the Web3 and music space. I probably shouldn't say too much more than that, but like, I think watch this space. There's going to be a lot of interesting projects that uh,
Hmm.
leverages network effect and giving value to users instead of extracting value from them, which has been the whole issue with the music industry, and why producers and creators are
Yes.
getting screwed by the people it's too much centralization, basically, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yes.
I think a little bit of what's in store.
For sure. I mean,
Amazing.
artists,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this is I think a lot of people would want to look into this even more now,
Mm,
because I was always lost when it came to like blockchain and how does that really connect with me,
mm,
a singer, an artist, a
mm,
producer, like how what can we do with that? And
mm,
I think you really kind of explained it very well. So
mm.
I think hopefully I'll be able to study a little more too, right,
Yeah,
Elmo?
Hmm.
there's
I'm always asking Elmo, "What is this? What is this? Like
a
what?" Like
yeah,
I'm
every
always asking
artist,
him.
or creator, I mean, um, if you're out there trying to build a following and just get people to
Yes.
engage with you, then it's a community. Every community is a network. And
Yeah.
so, there's a really interesting example or case study of this. Irene Zhao, Zhao. She's an Instagram influencer, um, and her partner Ben, um, who's a tech guy, basically said, "Hey, dude, you should follow this Web3 stuff. Like, you should set up a DAO." And she's like, "Well, what is this?" And like, we
Huh.
kept pinging her and kept
What is
like,
that?
and then eventually, I guess, they decided to do it, and so they started the first, I guess, influencer DAO. It's called Irene DAO, and
Hmm.
yeah, so she's got all these people, and it's a fantastically powerful way to interact, directly with fans. They can like, you can set up just communication. You can actually do rewards for things. You can give like special
Hmm.
um, like events and so on and so forth. So there's just like a lot. Get them engaged, so the power users are actually
Yes. Yes.
not just consuming, but they're producing and engaging other members and so on. So,
Hmm.
anyways, if anyone who's interested in how kind of like this space can impact them and their following eventually, that might be a good case study to go check out. Yeah. Irene and Ben are
For
friends. So
sure.
yeah,
I'll be there.
yeah.
So
I'll be checking
the
that.
reason why I mentioned that this question connects with the previous thing that you were talking about in terms of people's current mind states of where they feel the path is towards making it in the music industry is like making music, getting discovered by one of the intermediaries, getting a big budget, or just getting a big marketing push, and then splitting the profits or getting gouged by the record companies or whatever. Um, and the reason why I um, I felt like that connected with what you were just saying is because I see that as this new frontier, this new path for music creators to shift towards in terms of their mindset. But
Yes. Hmm.
I don't see people really getting it, right? So,
Like
would
me.
you say, would your advice to music creators right now be to guys, the new frontier is blockchain. Blockchain will change everything. Let's stop creating music and thinking in a way that you need somebody to intervene in order for you to have success, and just go
Do
towards
you?
this route of building a community, creating a social token, or you know just putting it out there um, in a way where your fans can be connected to you in a more personal way.
Yes. Short answer is yes, absolutely. I guess longer answer is like so. So the way I view the world is, my mom said this to me once. She said, you put far too much weight on influential people. The only person you need is God,
Mm.
right? And so, yeah, I think that's. I was like, oh, what are you talking about? Whatever. I mean, like
Hmm.
God can use influential people. He puts them in my life. I get introduced them. They help me and open up doors and whatever. And there's something to that. But I think in general, we're all too much like that. We're all
Uh-huh.
the natural human tendency is to think like, yeah, I need that external thing or person or whatever it is. If
Yeah.
only this could happen, or if only I could meet that person or collaborate with this person on a track or whatever. But I don't think that's really true. I think there's so much
Mm.
more that you can do. And if you believe in sort of what I believe, yeah, I mean, God can work through anything, right? That's
Amen.
sometimes that's I find actually in my life that He uses these ridiculously um, how do you say, more miraculous ways, just because it's like more of a fun
Mm.
story, right? And it's
It
all
is.
about having testimonies and stuff afterwards. So yeah, absolutely. I think that we shouldn't put so much weight on these intermediaries. Now, question is like how much. I think a lot of people are sort of overwhelmed by this space, and that's okay. I don't. It's going to be around for a long time, so uh,
It's
you
hard
know,
to, yeah.
it's like the internet. So I started my first company in the late '90s, and it was like the internet was getting going, then the whole tech boom and bust happened, and '99, 2001 and stuff and throughout that time there were .com startups, and like you were not .com startup like company, or you were a .com company, right?
Hmm.
But nowadays, think about it.
Mm.
Is there any company or any artist or any producer, or anybody period, who would like consider themselves like a .com versus like I'm not a .com? Everybody uses the internet. You just have to use it. It's part of your
Yeah.
fabric of your everybody's everyday life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
blockchain is going to be the same. So you don't need to learn all about it. And it's like, oh my goodness, if I can't understand this, the whole thing next month, it's not worth it. Dude, this is going to be around for a long time, right? So just chip away, just like learn
Yeah.
a little bit at a time.
Mm.
And you don't need to be a crypto company or a crypto producer or like Irene Dow or whatever. But if you just put a
Mm.
little
Yeah.
bit of your mind space towards kind of getting up to speed on
Yes.
what's going on, it's going to pay dividends over a long period of time. I think most of the people here are
For
not
sure.
90 years old and like trying to produce music for a couple of years before they're out, right? And they're taking
Yeah.
Yeah.
upstairs. Like, you got a long time ahead of you, so use it. Don't you don't have to be in a rush. Yeah.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Cool.
Thank
Well,
you.
let's turn the lens back to John Kim, the man, the music creator.
Hmm.
How are you channeling your inner music creator these days in your work?
Yeah. So, you know, so I started this vlog, right, the John Kim Show, which we talked about, and um, talk about a lot of random things there. But there's this one. I sometimes I feature our portfolio companies, and there's one company
Mm.
called Joro. So it's an app. Y'all can download it, and you download the app, and you can hit this integration with a company called Plaid. So it'll sort of upload all your credit card data, and it'll tell you this is your carbon footprint, and it'll tell you like how you
Mm.
can decrease your footprint over time. If you go vegetarian one meal a week, it'll have this impact, and so on and so forth. So it's trying to help sort of climate change. And if you
Nice.
want, you can say like after you lower your footprint, you can hit a button, and it's a net zero subscription. So whatever footprint you have, you can buy some carbon offsets, high quality offsets, verified.
Wow.
So you know that you're not making any negative impact on the environment with your life. So, anyways, like I was writing a video script for this company, and they have a website, and on the website they have their values, like what we stand for, and all this. And so I was just there, and I was
Mm.
like kind of just writing out, kind of like my early poem, just writing out whatever. And then like two of the lines rhymed, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I kind of kept writing, and then got a little bit more to rhyme and stuff. And then it's like, oh, maybe this could be a song. So then it ended up, I threw up some samples in there, and then I actually called Elmo. So thank you for your help on that. And then
Oh, no worries.
yeah, and then next thing you know, it's like this song. We did a music video, and I sent it to the CEO. She loved it. Sunchali is her name,
Wow.
and she's like,
Wow.
"This is amazing." And she was like, I think she went skiing in Tahoe or something. She was like, we were listening to it in the car on the way to Tahoe, like the whole time and stuff. And so it was
That's
so interesting for me
awesome.
that, and so going back to the integration thing, like I never in a million years thought I'd be writing songs for my portfolio companies and they would like it. And it would be
Hmm.
like this differentiated way for me to add value to portfolio companies. There have been multiple companies now after
That's
that when I'm
smart.
trying to win a deal, I'm like, hey, you should take my money, not that guy's money. And
Yeah.
you have to like
Yeah.
position and hustle and stuff. And then so you're saying like
Yeah.
I've done this for this company, I've done that for that company, and like
I made
not
a song.
yeah, not being too promotional, but I'll send this thing. I'll be like, hey, I wrote a song for Joro. I could write one for you.
That's
It's so funny,
crazy.
man, how that becomes like the clincher for like multiple.
Really?
That's
Yeah, yeah. I
awesome.
never in a million,
That's
because if you
beautiful.
think about it, there are a lot of
It
VCs
makes you
out there,
different.
and they
Hmm.
all add value in different ways. And again, like I said, I've been blessed to work alongside some really amazing people. And
Hmm.
it's not that writing music is a better way to add value or worse, but I gotta say, I can't think of any other VC in the world who's doing it. So it's pretty different. It's differentiated. And so I think
For
that's kind
sure.
of the way I think about it is like, I'm not trying to be the best for everybody, but there's some portion of people out
Mm.
there where if I'm the best fit for you because I do something that nobody else does, then I'm going to win that deal, right? I don't need to win every deal, but I
Hmm.
need some segment of deals that I can win because I'm a good fit.
Mm.
And it's funny how music has
Yeah.
actually been that. So we put out another one for this company called Clarity recently, and then have a
That's
couple others in
awesome.
the works that we're working on. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm scratching my music itch these days, and it's been a ton of fun. I have
Yeah.
not,
I bet.
yeah, and again, I never would have expected that these worlds would collide in this way.
That's awesome.
And it's working
Well,
beautifully for
we
you. I
definitely
love
hope
it.
that your musical gifts can bring in more deals and more workflow,
Yeah,
more deal
For
flow.
sure.
Yeah,
hope
that's
so too.
that's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
By the way, I've been collabing on some of those with a couple members of the Sonically community, but not just you, Almo, right? I think like Aiden and Chris and stuff.
yeah,
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Oh
Would love
my
to find
that's
God.
awesome.
other ways to collaborate with them, but also other people in the community too. So yeah, it's great, Chris.
Yeah, you
This
hear that,
is
guys?
amazing, guys. Did you hear that? Oh my gosh. Everybody just I feel like this is going to be an interesting episode for sure because it's something that I don't think we've ever really I mean we try to talk about it, but it never got this deep. But to have me focused like on a conversation or a topic that I absolutely don't know and like I don't really know much about, like you really kind of grabbed my attention. I think, oh, this might work. This actually might really work. This might actually get through to our listeners. I am so excited. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
study a bit more too while we're on that. Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we're trying to do and trying to provide
Yeah,
is there is there are alternative ways of looking at things that aren't mainstream, right?
Mm.
And a lot
yeah,
of times those angles are the ones that really direct our future,
for
because
sure.
a lot of these guys that you're talking about in terms of these founders, a lot of times they're the outliers. They're the ones that have the ideas that go against the grain.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
I think there's probably somebody in our community that is a little bit different, thinks differently, creates his approach to creating music is different. So by default, if he were to start a business, he would probably do it in a way that's different, finding the angles, finding like what are the problems here that I'm seeing that nobody else is seeing. And from
mm.
what I understand about um, investing, and like I obviously don't know as much as John, but a lot of times it's those those are the ones that you look for, the outliers, the ones that are thinking in a way that um, if you put a bet on them, it could possibly be that unicorn or decacorn or whatever,
It could work. It could
whatever. Yeah.
work. Yeah.
There's a saying in.
I mean, it's been yeah.
Go ahead, Gina. Sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I was just going to say there's a saying in in VC that to do well, you have to be right, um, and you have to be contrarian. Because if you're right and you're just doing what everybody else is doing, you might make a bit of money or make a bet that everyone else is making, and but because everyone else is making it, it's like you have to split this pie with so many different people. So you're not really going to do that well. But if you're right and you're contrarian and you're like going against the grain, then that's really where the big outsized rewards are. And if you look at entrepreneurs, like really successful entrepreneurs, you look at Elon. He's a lot of people would have said he's a pretty weird dude, right? Like growing up and stuff. And he thinks very differently. And Mark, Zuck, like all these guys, they're pretty. Yeah, you have to think in a very unique way. Yeah, and I'd say the same is true of music, right? If you're just, I think there's a role and a moment um, for copying. I mean, most people learn their craft by copying, like all the um, people who come up. You have to almost emulate and try and become your mentor, right? And so you study as an artist, right, like Michelangelo or whatever, and you just copy his style. There's a moment for that, but eventually, if you're not adding something, doing something different that nobody else in the world has done before, or seeing things differently, then you're not really going to add any value or make it anywhere. I think so. Yeah, feel free. You got to embrace that difference. I used to think it was a weakness, like getting bullied and all that stuff. I hated being different, right? But now I see very much that like God had a purpose for that, and He has a
That's your
purpose.
strength.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was your strength.
yeah, and
Yeah.
He has a purpose in
I
that
feel
for you.
like being different.
Mm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, John, what you're saying and whatever everything you explained to us today, and you're just sharing your story and the path that you've been on, and you're still walking on that path right now. I feel like it'll move and inspire a lot of the younger generations today. So I'm just so thankful that
Mm.
you took the chance to come on to
Oh,
our podcast
me
and
too.
talk to us.
No,
Yeah. So why don't we
Yep.
let's run John through the rapid fire round and see how he
Yep.
does.
Okay, let's do this. So here we go then. Guys, we are going to start the rapid fire round with John right now. Okay, so in three, two, one. What DAW do you use and why?
Logic, because it integrates most tightly with Mac.
Okay, number two, an artist you would like to work with one day and why?
Um, the we've been talking about thinking big, right? So if I'm going to think really big, I'd love to
Go big.
have Biggie and Tupac come back from the dead, reconcile, and
What?
work on a
That's the
track
best answer.
that I,
Oh my
somehow
goodness.
involved in. Probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, everyone's probably like, I agree, I agree. Okay, number three. What is a sound that always brings you joy?
My violin.
A sound that brings you joy. Oh, I saw that coming. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, you how do you rank yourself for the following skill sets? Beat making. Let me see here.
6.
Arranging, sound design, mixing, top lining, and music theory.
Yeah, beat making, I'd say probably like a 6. Um,
Okay.
Arranging, maybe 7, a little bit. Okay. Sound design, I'm horrible at. It's like a 3 or 2. Mixing, maybe 7. Top lining, 6. And theory, I'm pretty good. Like classical is a lot of theory, so I'd say probably 9 on that.
Probably a 10. Anyways, number five, what is your reaction? Well, your facial expression when you know you've made some heat fire.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh,
Nice.
that that stank face. Okay. Oh, sorry, I lost track again. Number six. What is the secret to stay to staying relevant?
I think following your curiosity.
Ooh, I like that one. Okay, number seven. What tech innovation will be the future of music?
Yeah, we talked a lot about blockchain, Web3, and crypto. I think that's definitely part of it. I'm watching
Mm-hmm.
AI too. Yeah, what AI is going to do for music. There have
Ooh,
been some
for
interesting companies in that.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, last but not least, what's next for John Kim? Is there anything you want to plug or promote?
Um, my family and I are actually moving to LA next month, so we're in
What?
a period of quite a big transition. And so
Wow.
there's some projects that sort of like circle around that. But actually, one that's taking up a lot of my headspace, which I just enjoy thinking about, is I'm starting a DAO with some folks. Actually, Elmo is one of the people, but it's
Ooh.
effectively a church DAO. It's called Endao, ENDAO, and Endao means to give.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, it's just the idea is like um, church has done a lot of great things historically, educated a lot of
Mm.
people, fed a lot
Yes.
of people, healed a lot of people. It's done some bad things. It's killed
Yes.
some people, started wars and stuff like that. Usually because
Mm.
there's a central. The bad stuff is because it's a little centralized and not necessarily the most benevolent person at the
Mm.
center of everything. So we just thought this DAO concept is really interesting to think about and maybe execute to be a new form of church. Right? We know nowadays church is not a building. Right? It's
Mm.
it's a people. So yeah, we've
It
just
is.
started to meet, and I'm not necessarily trying to promote it. We're not trying to grow it or anything like that. But yeah, it's something that I'm excited about. At some point, we'll open the doors, and yeah. And if you want to
I'm
just keep
excited.
keep yeah on in touch about that, I have a website, johnkim.co, johnkim.co. So I have like a meditations blog there, and if you sign up, like I'll be announcing as sort of we open that thing up.
Wow.
Awesome. Awesome.
That is amazing, John. How do you have time for anything? Like, what are you? Is there like,
What
is
are
it, I
you?
swear, you probably have like, what are you? Like, you have so many like things going on, and like, uh, you're one person. There should be like 10 of you. Like,
Oh no, I'm just a
I'm,
little
I'm, I'm
dude.
baffled. But
No.
I'm
yeah, like,
humble.
do you have time? Yeah, this is crazy. This is you gave us this much time today, and yet you're doing like
Oh.
a quadrillion things. Like, it's crazy for me. Like, it's just I don't know. I'm just blown away. Like, this is crazy. I didn't know that you did this much. Like, I mean, I knew of you, and I heard of you, and I saw you, and I watched your things. But then I was like, but that's like not even half of what I knew. Like, you do a lot more behind the scenes. So this is very interesting.
You're too kind, Gina.
Thank you
Way
so
too
much.
kind. Yeah, thank you. But
Thank you so much.
So,
always have time for you
John,
guys. Let me know anything I can do to support Sonically.
awesome. Actually, there is one last thing. I'm hoping that you could bless us with. Could you shout out the Sonically community with a little bit of with using the word Sonically and giving
Yeah.
the community a little last piece of advice?
Let's get ready for this, guys.
The
Sorry.
pressure. Oh my goodness. um,
Sorry for.
yeah, I think I've actually been following this journey, right, the Sonic.ly journey, right, and just watching it progress, and I've been so blessed by it. And when I think about it, I guess um, what I think about is um, from the beginning, actually, I saw Elmo first, and obviously Gina now
Mm,
too. Like, just really sticking to his guns. And there were so many times that we were discussing things like, oh, does it make sense to do this or that or whatever? But it just came
mm,
down to like, what is my passion, right? And what is
mm,
my tool that I can give to the world? And so when I think of sonically, I think about like going into the depths of yourself, what's unique about you, what God has blessed you with, what God has endowed you with, and how to leverage that to give back and to make an impact on the community. So that to me is what sonically means. So I
okay.
guess I think that's something that all of us could do a bit more of. And so I'd encourage all of you guys out
Yes.
there to live life sonically.
Yeah. Nice.
Woohoo!
Whoa, you
Thank
wrapped that up
you.
like a
John, you're
button. I was
amazing.
like, boom.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, John. We love you. We love you. Sonically
uh,
loves
We love
you.
you,
We
John.
love
Sonically loves
you.
you.
And we love your son too. He's so adorable. I just want to bite him.
His
Anyways, I'm gonna stop right
three
there.
sons. They're all
Oh,
awesome.
all your
They're
sons?
amazing.
Oh my gosh, you're
Yeah, they're
so
all on the
busy.
show.
You're the busiest dad in the world.
I have a great wife. That's yeah. It's no, it's
Yeah,
been such a pleasure. You guys are
for sure.
awesome, and much love to
Thank you.
you both. Much love to everybody in the community, and anything I
For
can do to support
sure.
any of you, just holla. I'm always around.
Thank you so much.
He
Thank you
says
so much
that,
for
but he's
joining
really
us.
busy. But thank
Um,
you.
let's give it up one last time for John Kim.
For John.
Kimbo.
Woo!
Peace out.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye bye.